Welcome to the SubHub podcast. I'm MK Sullivan.
And I'm Dani Moreno. And today we are getting into the deets of the recently released Team USA selection races for the 2025 Trail and Mountain World Championships, which are taking place in Spain. So we got, talking about last year's results, what those races look like, and then chat about some questions we were submitted. But first and very, very foremost, can we all bow down to the New York City Marathon champion of the mass start, MK Sullivan?
Thank you. Yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah. Tell us
I
the day, the whole thing.
I will.
I
I
will.
sent Helen and Tommy and Rick a text message after one of my like really good workouts a couple weeks ago. And I was like, you guys, I'm gonna win the freaking New York City Marathon. And it was like a joke because obviously I
Yeah.
wasn't even in the pro field. So I was like, I like just watch out, guys. I'm gonna run like 2:18. And turns out I actually did win the New York City Marathon for all the regular people that start at 9:10 a.m. and not at 8:30 a.m. But still super cool. I will take that to my grave.
I feel like that's a perfect example of the power of MK's manifestation. I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win. And then you freaking won.
So funny. Yeah, I texted Dani on my like morning bus trip and I was like, dude, I'm sitting next to Shannon Robury right now. And we're just like chatting it up like we're best friends. And she was actually the one that she asked me what I wanted to run. I told her I wanted to run 2:35 and she was like, "Oh, well then you could probably like win this thing." And I was like, "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard." And turns out it was not crazy. So that's pretty cool. It was a very cool experience to be like the first woman going through because yeah, I just like the whole day I'd turn a corner and there were crowds everywhere, but there'd always be like one group of people that were like, "Oh my gosh, first woman, you go, lady, you go," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
That is so sick. Like, I can only imagine what that must have felt like because how far behind were you from the first field that got let go or,
40
started?
to 45 minutes. So
Oh
basically
my
like they'd
gosh.
been gone for like almost an hour by the time like our race started. So it was like a fully separate thing.
Dang. Okay. And then it gets let go or they release the people in waves. Because I was like, how did you not know you were winning? But that makes sense. It's like someone could have started 20 minutes behind you and you don't know what pace they're running.
Like I knew that I was kind of winning, but I was also running with because I started with all um the other men as well, right? And so I was around men the entire time, and I remember seeing a couple women like around me for the first couple miles, and like I was like, I think I know where I am, but you never know with that many people.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I when I saw Fast Women's newsletter, I was like, oh my gosh, because I thought that I'd won. I told
Yeah.
Tom Hooper at the finish line, like when I saw him, I was like, I think I won this race. And so but I couldn't find results anywhere outside of like the pro field. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I was pretty stoked. And I still finished I think 22nd or 23rd in terms of time for women on the day.
Whoa.
Um and when I ran Chicago Marathon like back in 2019 or whatever that was, I think I was like 35th. So also a PR for like just world majors in general for me.
Dude, that's so sick. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know how many of y'all were following MK, but I was following her from the moment I woke up and like textbook splits. Like you were so even the whole time.
I feel really good about the way that I ran that race. Fortunately, like Rick is, big Strava guy, like is constantly looking at other people's races, like what it looks like. And he had told me before the race started, he said, anybody who goes out too hard, up the first hill and then also too hard down, because the first 2 miles is up a bridge, down a bridge. And so people go out hard up the bridge and then they try to make up for the fact that they ran slower than pace on the way down. And he was like, everybody who does that like ends up having a really rough second half. So he told me to go out 30 seconds slower than pace for the first mile. which I did. And then he was like, and I don't want you running any faster than like 10 seconds faster than pace on the way down, which was so hard because it's actually like a really
Yeah.
steep downhill. But I was like, okay, we're not running faster than 5:45. Like this is what we're doing, and it's fine. And I ran with another woman for probably like the first 13 miles, and she asked me, she was like, what are you trying to run? And I was like, I'm trying to run 2:35, but like really just sub 2:40 would be great. She's like, cool, me too. And
Sick.
so I told her, I was like, just don't like, we can't run too fast here. And then miles 2 through 14 are basically just run as close to pace as you possibly can because it's rolling, but it's still like
Yeah.
you only cover one bridge in that time and it's not as steep as the others. And then both Rick and Emma Bates told me that mile 15 to 16, like you need to respect that bridge because it is so hard. And I got there and I was like, oh my God, am I walking? Like I was running like 6:30 pace, but it felt like I was walking after like clipping away at like 5:52 to 5:55. But I was patient. I didn't hammer the downhill coming off of it either because I was told that you like Fifth Avenue looks like it's flat, which is the miles that you run going south down Central Park before you turn up to the finish. And it was not flat. It was so hilly. So I was glad that I had something left. But I was like at that point, after the 16-mile bridge, so like mile 17, like I was starting to fight for my life out there. It like that bridge was so hard. But I was still running pace for the most part. And then you get into Central Park, you hit another big hill at like mile 23. Again, just fighting for your life out there. But at that point, I was just like so stoked to be like at mile 23 and not mentally just like dying like I had in all of my other marathons that I was like, I can push as hard as I can from here on out. And so the pictures that I post on Instagram were from like mile 22, and I thought I was
Oh,
smiling at people in the crowd, but I'm just like gritting my teeth and my double chin is all like squished up because I'm like my elbows are in my ears, and I was working hard those last 3 miles, but it was awesome.
yeah, that sounds so sick. Seeing all of your like photos leading up to it, I was like, this is a super like it's just a sick vibe out there. It looks
Yeah.
so fun. And
It
I don't know.
it was because I ran Chicago in 2019 and I was like, oh, World Major Marathon. It's gonna be so cool. It's gonna be packed. It's gonna be like crazy. But I ended up running most of the race like by myself. And then also like the middle part of the course was kind of dead in terms of like spectators. This course from the moment you got over into Brooklyn on the other side of the bridge at mile 2, basically until the end was lined with people. And there were a couple sections in Brooklyn specifically where like you couldn't hear anything because there were so many people lining the streets. And I looked at the guy that I was running with at that time. I was like, I can see how people run too fast in the beginning of this race. Like the crowd just like pulls you along. I kept having to check my watch and being like, it's too fast. You gotta slow down. This is too fast. You're gonna die later. Because it was just like it was so electric.
That's so sick. You need to run Boston next and just like keep
That's what I've
going.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
gonna
I mean,
try
it
to.
sounds very similar, but like, y'all, MK ran 5:55 average. Maybe she like took a couple seconds to stop her watch, and her last mile was 5:38 pace, which is
That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
crazy. Yeah. Like, and I can see where that like hill that you're talking about at mile 15. But again, like you went 6:07, 6:30, but then you went right back to pace, 5:46, 5:51, and just like clicked back in. Oh, I mean, we've been giving so much hype to our next gen, and I don't know, MK, what gen you're considered in our trail running world.
Me either.
Uh, but like golden ticket and winning New York City Marathon in the same year, I think that is a first. Definitely a first.
And one of my friends pointed out, he was like, dude, you PR'd in the mile and the marathon this year, like doing what you love and not focusing on this. That's awesome. And I was like,
Yeah.
you're right. I totally forgot that I PR'd in the mile. Like running is running at the end of the day. I think a lot of people sometimes like look down at us in the trail world and they're like not as fast, like these are the less talented people. But like just because we're not running fast on the day-to-day basis doesn't mean it's not still there. Like all you need
Yeah.
is 3, 4 weeks of some turnover and like some running economy. And the heart rates that we're pushing in these races are crazy.
Totally. Yeah. And 3 to 4 weeks after a lot of hard-earned years, I will say,
Yeah,
like, on your end. But to your point, like, you did 2 drill races during your buildup. Like, that's so freaking sick. Like, it truly is finding what makes you most happy. And, people always wanna when you're, like, a bright and shiny star, they wanna, like, take credit for your journey sometimes, but it's like, you truly need to do, like, what's best for you, and that's just so cool. I'm so happy for you. When I saw the
thank
time, I
you.
was like, "She called it! She called it!"
I know it's crazy, and it's funny because Rick the day before he's like, I think you're gonna run like right around 2:37, just because it's New York, and then I ran 2:36:41, and I was like, damn, he's good.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Well, yeah, huge congrats, MK, co-host of the Sub Hub podcast. This girl deserves a key to the city. She got no prize. I'm so upset she didn't get like even like a stuffed apple or something. But we know in our hearts that she's our champion. And she's doing next is still TBD.
Yeah, yeah, I'm getting greedy now because I had a good day. So I got to figure out if I want to take a break or if I want to sign up for another race because, you like when you have good
Totally.
races, you want to just like keep that momentum going. And it's we talk about this every year. Every year I'm like, I need to take a break, it'd probably be good for me, but I have a really hard time taking a break because I like to run. So
Yeah. And have you decided what you want to do early next year already? Like as a race?
yeah, my first race next year will be Black Canyon 100K. So
And I mean, like, yeah, I there's a theme going on here. Rachel Drake ran 2:35 last year at CAM, absolutely smashed Black Canyon.
yeah,
So there's something in the water with these fast 100K debutantes. Well, Rachel's done a couple, but I'm so
she left
excited.
and came back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yes, congrats to our gal MK forever. Before we transition to the Team USA stuff, here is a ad regarding one of our sponsors. Hey guys, Dani here. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Never Second. They quickly have gained popularity in the endurance world for their gels and powders, which feature a modular system that makes it super easy to customize your fuel intake, whether you need 30, 60, or 90 grams of carbs per hour. Personally, I love their products because they're easy to digest, they help me stay fueled during my cross training and running sessions, and the mix and match flavors keep things fun and fresh. If you want to try Never Second, head over to neversecond.com. That's NEVER number 2.com and use SubHub25 for 25% off your order.
All right, you guys, welcome back. Let's chat US mountain running, trail running team. This last week before I got to New York, Danny and I released our sub-hub headlines to just share with you guys how to qualify for the US team as this upcoming year is a world championship year. The world championships are taking place in September in Spain, in the Canfranc, well, that's what the race is called. I think the region is just the Canfranc Pyrenees region. But yeah, so what were your first impressions to the races that were released, Danny?
Yeah, I think they're great. You know, did you want to talk about last year first, or do you want to get into this?
Yeah, we can still talk about last year first. I'm just
Okay.
wondering, yeah,
Oh, just like first reactions. Before
yeah,
we dive into it, I think they're really good races. Like they're races that have each have a little bit of different history. Um, and I think they're gonna honestly select really good teams that we can dive into in a second.
yeah. And this World Championships will be the third edition of this new format that they started in was supposed to be 2021, ended up being 2022 just because of COVID, where there is a short trail, which is usually marathon distance, long trail, which is around 80K, a vertical team, and a classic team, which is usually about an hour of two up downs. Having all of those happening on the same weekend instead of having separate world championships throughout the year. And last year, this took place in Innsbruck, Austria, where we sent a full team. And yeah, do we want to go over some of the results from last year before we get into next year?
Yeah, just to get people hype. Like MK said, this happened in Innsbruck last June. And while this is a global podcast, we are going to highlight the American team a little bit more. So, starting off in the vertical uphill, our top finisher was Grayson Murphy with a bronze. And then we also had Joe Gray, who earned a fifth place on the men's side. And the women's team earned a fifth place as a team, which was really cool.
Yeah, and then in the classic, we did not have any men finish in the top five, but Grayson Murphy was our world champion.
Whoop, whoop, back
Absolutely
to
crushed
back.
it back to back. And because of this, the women ended up also taking away or walking away with fourth place.
Yeah, which is awesome. And then we had the short trail, which again, our co-host MK was on that team, and they ended up earning a bronze, the women in the short trail. And our top finisher was Jen Lichter with fourth place. But as far as that team across the board that scored, MK earned ninth place, and Kimber was 16th place.
And then in the long trail, we had our highest team finish of the weekend with a second place for the men. The women also came in and finished fourth. Top finisher on the men's side was Drew Holman in fifth. It was a very cool race to watch because Drew finished in fifth. He outsprinted Zach for sixth, then Eric came around the corner in seventh, like just a minute behind them. Allison Baca was the top finisher on the women's side in sixth place, and Emily Schmitz also finished in the top 10 at seventh.
Yeah, so all of this ultimately ended with the USA earning a third place overall in kind of like this new format that they give points no matter what position you place in. And I honestly need to dive back into this, but I think for the long trail and short trail, the trail races were points by time
I
or
think so.
something like that. And then the VK and the uphill were not by time, they were by place. Don't fact check us on that because I'm unsure. But anyways, we were third place, and then France, who honestly has been a very, very dominant country at these world championships for decades at this point, they were gold, and then Italy earned silver. So yeah, that was last year. As far as again individual medals go, it was only Grayson Murphy
Yep.
who brought us back a gold and a bronze because she's incredible.
And we can talk about this a little bit later because somebody did ask a question similar to this, but part of the reason that France is so dominant is because they put a lot of money into this team. They do team camps on the courses like prior to European championships, world championships. So once you qualify, like they take you out for a week to recon the course with your team. Um, and obviously, that's not the only reason they're good, but like definitely a big reason for why they tend to be very dominant in this space.
Yeah, I would agree. But as far as getting you all hyped for 2025, let's take it a step back again and talk about these selection races.
Hey y'all, it's MK. If you've seen me out on the trail or at a race this season, you've probably seen me rocking the Pit Viper Admirers. These heart-shaped glasses have been my go-to for a look good, feel good attitude on race day and just in training. Not only do they make me look way cooler than I am, but they come at an affordable price and they come in a style for any personality or mood you might be having. Pit Vipers are the sunglasses sunglasses would wear if sunglasses could wear sunglasses. If you want to run in style, go to the link in our show notes for 15% off your next Pit Viper purchase. See you out on Party Mountain.
So, as you may have read in our recent issue of the Subhub headlines, which if you haven't already subscribed, consider subscribing. There's so much great info. This was just the main topic for this go around. But we have a series of 3 race weekends, which will help determine our USA teams across these 4 disciplines. The first one being on April 12th, actually, for the long trail, Gorge Waterfalls 100K. They will take the top 2 women and the top 2 men. And then the rest of the members will be chosen from resumes, which are due no later than June 30th, which will be a common thread for all of these, and the team being announced on July 15th. And strong considerations are going to be given to athletes who do show up to this race. So if you show up in your third or fourth, you are definitely going to be considered given a higher consideration than someone who, submits a resume without going to Gorge.
Yep. Especially if you finish close to those first two people.
Yeah. What do you think about this race being selected? Because this race actually has had the most commentary,
Drama.
drama, commentary, social discussion on its honestly its selection as a race to pick, the folks for the long trail. And because as someone pointed out, like the course in Spain has a lot of vert and the
Like
downhills,
almost 20,000 feet, right? It's like 18K over the 50 miles.
it's beefy. It's
Yeah.
super beefy. And it's very technical descents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just as a reference, CCC is 100K and has 19,000 feet of gain. And this is 50 miles and has 18,000 feet of gain. So definitely beefy. But my first thought is I was like, it's definitely less comparable, I think, than the other three selection events. But living in the US, it's really hard to find a selection race that would match a race like the one in Spain, especially because any of the races that are going to have that much vert are usually at a really, really, really high altitude. So it's early enough in the season that I think that people have plenty of time to qualify and still have time to train for Spain. But I do think that having the top two men and women get spots and then being able to pick resume spots for the other four is very deliberate so that they can still pick athletes that they know have, I guess, more experience maybe in those like more technical but also verty runs. What about you?
Yeah, it is the race with the least amount of selections directly from the race itself, which I think is also due to the fact that it's long trail and people can only run so many long races a year. And considering that the race is in September, this is also the longest amount of time between making the team. So that's May, June, July, September. So like 5 months between
Which
making the
really is
team.
like that's like I think perfect for
Yeah,
100Ks.
yeah, exactly. I think so too. Um, Honestly, I mean, for me, I get the vert for sure. I would hope if someone makes the team, they know what they're signing up for. And maybe there's some communication there being like, hey, you just won this race, which has significantly less vert. Like, make sure, you're kind of prepping the legs and stuff. Um, but honestly, like, my mind went more to, like, slippery rocks at Gorge Waterfalls. I don't
Yeah.
know really how technical the whole course is, I haven't run it myself, but the Pacific Northwest does have, like it's more technical because it's slippery, and I really think Spain is might be snow, rain, just based on the time of year, and for that, I
Routes.
thought it was actually probably a good selection. Like if someone can navigate these trails really well, and then just, trade up their legs. And there were a couple other comments too that like Drew Holman ran one Lake Sonoma 50 miler and then
Which I
was
would argue was an even worse selection race.
yeah, exactly. And was fifth in the world,
Yeah.
from that. And to me, it's like if people show up and it's super competition dense, that'll be more telling of, a good Team USA member versus like the course itself.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that argument, I qualified myself and Kimber Maddox qualified at Formidable last year, which is a
True.
50K with 6,000 feet of gain for a race that was 27 miles and had 12,000 feet of gain. And we were the second and third finishers on the team, and we both finished. I finished ninth, she finished 16th. Like to Danny's point, like if the race is competitive, and Claire Rhodes was third there, and she was our fourth finisher at Worlds. So if the race is competitive, like it will elevate the likelihood that you're sending a good team.
Yeah. And also like how many times do you actually want to run a course that is that
Oh,
hard
yeah.
throughout the year because this is, there might be some folks like all due respect that like this is their thing, right? Which is totally cool. Um some of the potentially more experienced runners because they've been enabled by potentially a travel budget in the past few years and are running for a brand also are going to have brand duties, I guess, like races that the brands want them to do. And so truly finding a race that like someone can jump into and then, potentially have done Black Canyon or something else to like get into Western states. I don't know. It gets a little bit more complicated, but through and through, I can see where people are coming at, but I do think it weighs more on a smart selection than not.
Yes, yeah. And I think kind of to my point earlier as well, like all most of the other races being like races in the US that have that kind of vert to match are at like a super high altitude most of the time. They're like in Cal
Yeah.
or in Colorado and like Leadville or San Juans or something like that. And I just don't think that picks the best team because that takes like a very specific set of like training and skills that you have to have. Whereas most people can compete at sea level.
Yeah, that's true. Um, cool. Well, that's the first one. The next one happens beginning of June. This is the Classic Mountain. This is where our back-to-back world champion Grace Murphy has thrived over the last 3-4 years. And this is going to take place at Sunapee Scramble. The top three women, because Grayson Murphy receives an automatic team spot for obvious reasons. She's the world champion. And the top four men will be selected here. So there's no resumes. However, if an athlete declines or for some reason can't make the world's team, it's going to go down to the top 10 athletes from both this race and the VK, in which case um, they'll be included into the resume pool.
Yeah, so they will choose from a resume pool, but the people who finish fifth to 10th will automatically have their names put into that pool. So
Exactly.
that they,
Just
yeah,
because you get fifth place doesn't necessarily mean you would be the roll down selection.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
And this one, not that controversial. I mean, Sunapee Scramble has put on this race several times in the past. It seems to be a pretty good race. Um, as if any of you guys watched the live stream last year, it's super technical. Like Grayson was moving down the side of that hill so fast, and I was like, she's gonna break her ankles. Like, how is she doing this? And it's usually also similarly to Gorge, pretty wet, pretty rainy, which like, as Danny said earlier, perfect kind of conditions to simulate a good team.
Yeah, no, definitely. It seems like it's a little technical on the up, but mostly fire road and then technical on the way down, which honestly is perfect for
Yeah.
replicating Spain. Um, that also will have, you can submit your resume via the Google form, which is linked in our Subhub headlines. And the teams for all of these, as I said, will be mentioned on July 15th. But last but not least, we have Broken Arrow. I think pretty much an American iconic, like cherished event at this point. But there is going to be two teams that have folks selected via events on the race weekend. The first being on Friday, June 20th, the VK, which, as we've seen, has just like delivered year on and year out. And that will be the top four women and top four men. And the same with Sunapee. If someone declines their spot, 5th through 10th on both sides will be put into that resume pool.
Yes. And again, Broken Arrow VK has been a championship selection race before for both the 23K and the VK. So this isn't that surprising. The VK is a little bit less vert than the world's course will be, but it's also at a bit of a higher altitude. So I think that kind of evens itself out in the end. I think the 20, or sorry, the short trail
46.
selection team being the 46K is perfect. Like it's the closest
Yeah,
thing we could get in the US because it's, what is that, 28 miles and there's,
a lot of vert.
I think 10,000 feet of gain. It's either like 9 or 10,000 feet of gain, and Worlds is going to have like close to 13. So I don't know that there is another course that you can get that close to other than maybe Speed Goat, but Speed Goat's way too close in terms of time.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's a perfect selection race. Broken Arrow, like amongst all its races, is always incredibly stacked, and this will just add to it. It seems based on their email that maybe the short distance is going to be part of the Golden Trail National Series again, as it's been in previous years, or the
It was
Valsier
Valsier.
Valsier
Yeah.
World Mountain
I don't
Running
know that
Club.
they've confirmed Golden Trail at all yet.
Okay, national
Yeah.
or. Um, so yeah, it's going to be a crazy weekend. I mean, as we've already seen, this event was already a great standalone, but now that they've moved it to be the weekend before Western States, because I think maybe it used to be 2 weekends before, another thing to not quote me on. But it just is great because people who are crewing maybe are already there with their teammates who are getting ready for the start of the big Western States dance can jump into this race. Um, and unlike the other selections, if the top three, like if a podium finish declines their spots, those vacancies will not roll down to the next finishers. Oh, this is also resume. So this is
Yeah.
also resume. Wow. Okay. So in years past, they have rolled down, and this year, no races are getting rolled down. You'll be strongly
Yeah.
considered. And so if you want to make a USA team, I say you still show up, even if you're like, oh, I might finish sixth. Like, I don't know how I'm feeling. Go for it because you will be given a lot more weight in your
Wait.
resume.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the short trail team, top three automatic, next three resume.
Yeah. And I
And
just,
what were you gonna say?
oh no, I was just going to say like 3 for 3. All of those I feel are pretty tried and true as like great selection races.
Yeah. And those resumes are due June 30th as well. And just like the rest of the teams will be announced on July 15th.
Yes. So if you can't make any of these races, those are the dates to remember: June 30th and July 15th.
But yeah,
So,
like Dani said earlier, the Google form is in our SubHub headlines, and you can go ahead and like start filling out that resume. And the resume can be edited as the year goes on. So like if you run a race that you want to put in there, you can go back in and edit your resume. And the results that they take for the resume are only between June 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2025.
yes. So this last June. Yep. And in order to qualify for the USA team, you do have to be an active USATF member. So if you aren't already, go in there, sign up. There's usually a due that you can sign up for like a year, multi-year, whatever feels comfortable for you. Um, if you're like, dang, why do I have to buy this membership? Well, also USATF covers most of your travel, and a lot of that money does come from these dues. So just think of it as an investment in yourself or in Team USA. And you also need to have a passport that's valid through March 30th, 2026. This is something that actually really sadly has happened a couple of times. So I'm glad they're putting it in here where Team USA athletes are stoked. They have all their USA gear. They get to the airport and they find out that because their passport isn't valid for a certain amount of months past when it expires, they get stopped there. And then Team USA is running a little short. That's actually happened to me twice where
Yeah,
teammates weren't able to make it.
because depending on the country, like if you're within 4 months of your expiration date, like they just won't let you into their country. So make sure that's updated. When it comes to the USATF membership, you do have to be a USATF member before the race that you're qualifying with. Like they use that to see, like if you're not a USATF member, you're not entered technically like in the selection race. You're just entered in the regular race. So make sure you guys get on that before you run any of the races.
Yeah, 100p.
Yeah.
All right. Where there well, there is that. If you are more of a visual person, again, SubHub Headlines has this all written down that you can refer to at any moment. So maybe start as a favorite as you're going through the year. Hey everyone, Dani here. Leading up to OCC, one of my biggest concerns was staying healthy and not getting sidelined by any sickness. After all, the last thing you want is months of training thrown out by a cold or a flu. That's where Beekeepers Naturals came in. I've been using their immune boosting products for over a year now, and they've become my secret weapon for keeping my immune system strong during tough training blocks. Honestly, they didn't just help me stay healthy, but they also took away a lot of the stress of worrying about getting sick. Their star ingredient, propolis, is packed with antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. My personal favorite is the throat spray, but they also have lozenges, syrups, and even options for kids. So if you're looking for a natural way to support your immune system, I highly recommend giving Beekeepers Naturals a try. Use code SUBHUB20 for 20% off any and all of your orders at beekeepersnaturals.com. Now back to the episode. But let's get into some fun questions. This first one we kind of already attacked, but we'll just, since it is the Q&A, are the races picked as qualifiers suitable? See a bit of chat, regorge not being suitable. Can you actually provide like a little more of the selection process? I think that might help people on this point.
Yeah. So, it should be known that ATRA and USATF don't just like blindly pick races. Races have to submit themselves as like possible selection races, and then they get chosen from that. And a lot of the times, I don't know if it's just like lack of awareness or like it's a money thing. It may also be like a drug testing thing because drug testing is really expensive. But people don't submit their races to be selection races. And so that's part of, I think, like the background that people should know when it comes to this whole process.
Yeah. So it's not just like picking out of a hat. There is some tape you have to go through. But yeah, as we said, we think these are all great choices, considering all of the restraints and requirements that are to be had by selecting these races. We can see the argument for gorge, but again, I think the good far outweighs the cons. The pros outweigh the cons. So yeah, thank you for your question.
Next question is, which female athletes could be the most versatile, i.e., make 2 to 3 teams? And we'll do both female and male athletes because we thought about this a little bit.
100
I'll go with
athletes.
yeah, there's a lot of athletes, but these are just the ones like off the top of our heads. On the women's side, Grayson Murphy, Lauren Gregory, Anna Gibson, Allie Mack, myself and Dani, Rachel Drake, Rachel Tomajic, Jade Bellsberg, Tabor Hemming, you name it. Like these women could make the vertical, short trail, classic team. Some of them could make the long trail team. Like there's so many options here, especially with the races being fairly spread out. The hardest one to do back to back would just be the VK short trail team, but it's not impossible for some of these women.
Yeah, it truly is a highlight of how insane the depth is right now because there are folks that like are extremely good at one of these things too and could go all in versus trying to make multiple teams. It does seem historically that there does seem to be like a little bit of favor with athletes who do the VK and classic. It just like is a double that works extremely well. But yeah, the talent is deep. I'm super interested to see like who actually ends up showing up to these races and it's in their race calendar to pick or to want to go to the world championships.
Yeah, literally since I've said those names, I've already thought of like 4 or 5 more. So I'm sorry to all the women that I missed, but like
Oh,
there's
say a couple more because it
like
just
I'm
goes
thinking
on.
Jen Lichter, Kimber Maddox, Claire Rhodes, like all have already made the short trail team, could make short trail or long trail. Like
Yeah.
there's just so many.
Yeah.
Bailey Kowalczyk could do classic or short trail, maybe even vertical. Like, yeah.
It goes on and on and on. Um, and yeah, it's it's just gonna be interesting to see where we end up on the female side. Cause like I'm like, what if Courtney Dauwalter and Katie Scheid decided to,
Do
make the
long trail.
team, yeah, to do
Yeah.
long trail. But like Courtney could probably they both can do short trail too.
Yeah.
Like for
Katie showed us
Katie,
that she can
second
crush a
place
short
at
race. Yeah.
OCC. Yeah. So to answer your question, it's endless. The men's side, it's the same. It's a great time to be an American trail running. Christian Allen, David Sinclair, Jim Walmsley got a close VK second behind Katja Kipnego, who was the world back-to-back VK champion at Broken Arrow VK this year. Eli Hemming, Mika Boudon
Boudelaine,
Rousseau,
we're so, yeah.
sorry. Taylor Stack is like an up and comer. All the trail team guys, Cade Michael also crushed it. So yeah, we are heavily stacked right now.
Yeah. Like, if it's going to be hard for us to do previews of these races. Like, it'll be interesting to see once people get into what they're going to, try to qualify for. But I still think that American trail running is so much deeper than it used to be that it's going to be like hard to pick people out.
Totally. I mean, we had a great team in Innsbruck, and it feels like we
It's
gained like
even
20
crazier now.
athletes, both men and women, already that could be
Yeah.
on the team within like 2 years. The other cool thing is that with these athletes, a lot of them coming from the collegiate system, like they're frothing to be on these USA teams, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. Next question, which I kind of touched on earlier, was how often or do you get to train together? I talked about how the French team is fairly dominant because they put a lot of money into their teams. They're able to travel to, go to camps beforehand. Unfortunately, USATF does not provide enough money for that to happen for us. So you don't get to train with the team at all unless you just like have funds and people on the team and you want to go train with a friend. Um, I don't know what funding looks like, but like prior to Innsbruck, we were able to get there, I think, 4 or 5 days in advance. Like that's what USATF was able to pay for in terms of hotels. If you wanted to get there earlier, you had to pay for it on your own. So, if that's something you want to do, you have to do it kind of on your own, but don't let that deter you. Still an amazing opportunity if you can make a team.
Yeah, I would say so. We will have to refrain from this being a super long side tangent, but if you were to pick a location for a team to say train end of July, what do you think would be the most ideal location to get them prepped for this sort of train?
Ooh, like if we were in the US.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe like the Cascades outside of Seattle
Yeah.
because it's sea level. Not that Canfranc's actually like a little bit of elevation, but it's sea level. It's steep in a lot of places and it's really rooty. So, and the weather can be like kind of variable. You can get some rain out there. So I think that would be my go-to, maybe. What about you?
Yeah, I was trying to think of somewhere that has a lot of climbing and um what you said, wetness.
Yeah.
Um
So
I'm
maybe
sure
the
there
East Coast
Yeah,
as
I was
well.
like trying to think somewhere in the East Coast could work, like where those are, but I don't know how long their climbs can be. Because most of the time when I've raced
Yeah.
out there, it's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles. And I'm trying to
And
think of places with long.
I think East Coast is also like a risk for a lot of athletes too. Like if you're not used to like
Yeah, that's
their
true.
trails, like they're super technical. So
That's
you
true.
run the risk of like getting hurt if that's something you're not like ready for.
Just everyone breaks their ankles a couple weeks
Yeah.
out. Well, we need a whole batch of
Ugh.
new best resumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be cool if that worked out. But to the point of this next question, July 15th team announcement for resume runners is a short turnaround to plan a Spain trip.
I don't think it's that short of a turnaround. Like 2 months, like you're still getting like pretty much the same. I mean, maybe okay, so this is like I'm thinking money. That was my first thought.
Yeah.
2 months seems to be plenty of time, like in terms of prices for flights. But if you have a job and you're trying to get time off, like I can understand how that might be a little bit trickier. But most of this is basically because um the final race for qualification is Broken Arrow, which is like June 22nd. The final race that they wanted included in like resume consideration was Western States, which is June 30th. So that's why the resumes end on June 30th, so that you can put that. And I think it was like La Laredo, if you ran that, that could be in your resume. And then that gives the committee 2 weeks to be able to choose resume spots, which, when you think about the fact that like the committee is volunteer based, most of them have other jobs and they're trying to like find time to get together. That's part of this whole date consideration.
I would think too, if it falls on the lines of golden ticket acceptance, maybe like people trying to figure out if they can do it, if they want to do it. So like, say you win Broken Arrow 46K and you're like, oh, I just made the USA team. Like, can I actually pull that off, with everything else that I have going on and like having to shift priorities and, like you said, work and family and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
know I hear what you're saying. It like seems short, especially if you make the 100K team, right? Because like that's also that time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But to that same argument, a lot of people are planning to race, like UTMB or something like
yeah.
in the fall anyways. So most people are training.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. And we'll go with that. This next this next question kind of plays along that. And thank you so much for all of these questions, everybody. The timing of releasing these events and why it's such a short window.
That one I really don't know the answer to. It probably has something to do with USATF, I would imagine, because they're like pretty strict with their like qualifying windows.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I'm not totally sure. But I think that when they pick these races, like the race directors also know that they have to take into consideration that there may be like an influx of people that like signed up for Gorge this week or like want to sign up for Broken Arrow. So I'm sure that even though it does seem kind of close to some of these races, like if you're somebody that feels like you can make the US team, like you might still be able to find a spot in these races.
Yeah, I think so too. Because the first one's in April, so it's like
Yeah.
6 months away. But Broken Arrow registration hasn't even opened yet. So if you need to
Yeah,
get a
it doesn't
spot
open
there,
until first week of December. So
totally. Yeah, but thanks all for these questions. Again, we're super hyped. We're going to be following this action all year next year. EmKay and I may or may not be involved in these races in some capacity. That is TBD, depending on our lives. But regardless, I think we are going to have another great year at the World Championships, just from, you know, words through the grapevine of who's interested in wanting to pin that jersey on hopefully next year.
yeah, so if you're looking to make Team USA, check out these selection races, check out the process, make sure you are a USATF member, make sure your passport's updated, get all that stuff out of the way now,
Get
and
it
then you
all
can
out of
focus
the
on
way.
training.
You tell them, EmKay, get it out of the way now. But yeah, this has been another great episode. I don't know why I'm saying that about ourselves, but it's been a fun time,
Great job
y'all.
to us.
Great job to us. Pat on the back again. If you haven't already, send EmKay a huge DM. Congrats on winning the New York City Marathon and TBD on what she does next. This has been the Self Help Podcast brought to you by Free Trail.